Close your eyes. The past is about to speak. When you think of a medieval monastery, you might picture a tranquil sanctuary. You see serene monks gliding through sun-dappled cloisters, their hands peacefully clasped, maybe humming a gentle chant while tending to a perfect rose garden. It's a vision of quiet contemplation, a life removed from the harshness of the world, dedicated to scholarly pursuits and a deep, peaceful connection to the divine. It seems like the ultimate escape, a serene spiritual retreat lasting a lifetime. But the reality was something else entirely. It was a life of rigid structure, of profound physical discomfort, and of relentless, back-breaking repetition. It was a world without personal space, without warmth, and without choice. Frankly, with your modern attachment to a comfortable mattress and a morning coffee, you probably wouldn't last a single day. The silence wasn't always peaceful. It was a rule to be enforced. The work wasn't a gentle hobby. It was grueling labor. And the day didn't begin with a slow, gentle sunrise. It began in the deepest, coldest part of the night. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your sleep is not your own. It is a temporary state, a borrowed reprieve from a life of constant service, and its end is not negotiable. There is no gentle awakening here. There is no slow crawl toward consciousness, no hazy 5 minutes spent debating the merits of rising. There is only the dark, and then the bell. It slices through the silence of the dormitory, a single, sharp, insistent clang of hammered iron. It's not musical. It's a command. It's a sound that seems to vibrate not in your ears, but in the bones of your skull, pulling you from the shallow depths of exhausted sleep with a jolt. For a moment, you lie perfectly still on your straw-filled pallet, the sound still echoing in the vast, cold space. The only warmth in the entire world seems to be the tiny pocket of heat trapped between your body and the thin wool blanket. To leave it feels like a small death, but you must. Around you, in the pitch black of the communal dormitory, you hear the rustle of 24 other bodies stirring. A muffled cough, the whisper of wool against straw, a quiet, involuntary groan of resignation. These are the only sounds because the great silence, the magnum silentium which began after last night's final prayer, is still in effect. To speak a word is a violation, a sin to be confessed later. So you move in a conspiracy of shared, silent misery. You swing your legs over the side of the low wooden cot, and the cold is immediate and absolute. It's not just in the air. It radiates upwards from the stone floor, a physical presence that seeps through the thin leather of your simple shoes. You don't have socks. Such luxuries are for the wealthy or the sick. Your feet are instantly numb. The air itself is frigid, carrying the damp, earthy smell of old stone, the faint, waxy scent of a distant, snuffed candle, and the ever-present, sour odor of unwashed human bodies sleeping in close quarters. It's the smell of your community, a scent you no longer notice unless a new postulant, fresh from the outside world, joins your ranks. In the darkness, you fumble for your habit. There is no choice to be made, a small mercy in a life devoid of them. Your fingers find the familiar, coarse texture of the undyed wool tunic. It's stiff and scratchy against your skin, a constant minor penance. You pull it over your head, the rough fabric scraping your ears. You find your scapular, the long strip of cloth that hangs down your front and back, and then the leather belt or cincture that cinches it all at your waist. You tie it tightly, the familiar pressure a grounding sensation in the disorienting dark. A faint light appears at the far end of the long room. It's the circator, the watchman of the monastery, making his rounds with a single lantern. His job is to ensure that every soul is awake and preparing for the first service of the day. His shadow stretches and looms on the stone walls, a silent, flickering giant. He is the monastery's human alarm clock, and there is no snooze button. If a brother were to remain in his bed, the circator would shake him awake, his duty overriding any sense of gentle courtesy. You have seen it happen. It is a small, quiet moment of shame for the slumbering monk. Historians and liturgists still debate the exact timing of these night offices. For some Benedictine orders, the bell for vigils, or matins as it would later be called, might ring as early as 2 in the morning. The schedule wasn't based on the sun. It was based on the Psalter, the holy book of psalms that had to be recited in its entirety every single week. This rigid cycle, laid down in the rule of Saint Benedict centuries ago, is the unyielding blueprint of your existence. It is designed to break your worldly will and remake you into a vessel of prayer. Right now, it just feels like it's designed to break your spirit. You join the river of shuffling shapes moving toward the single door of the dormitory. Your bare hands are icy, and you tuck them into the opposite sleeves of your habit, a gesture both for warmth and for reverence. You can feel the gritty dust of the floor under your shoes, a fine powder of stone and dirt that is never truly gone. Outside the dormitory, the cloister walk is even colder. The open arches on one side let in the raw night air, which feels impossibly sharp and clean in your lungs. Above, a sliver of moon might be visible, or a spray of brilliant, indifferent stars, but your gaze is kept downcast, focused on the heels of the brother in front of you. You are a shadow among shadows, moving in a silent procession toward the heart of your world, the church. The bell has stopped ringing now, its purpose served. The only sounds are the soft scuff of leather on stone and the collective, whispery rustle of wool. You place a hand on the cold, damp stone of the cloister wall to steady yourself, the texture rough and real under your numb fingertips. Every part of this journey is designed to remind you of your physical reality, to keep you from floating away on dreams or thoughts of comfort. The cold, the dark, the scratchy wool, the hard floor, they are all tools for mindfulness, anchors to the present sacred moment. Even if that moment feels like a form of torture, you and your brothers, a small island of disciplined humanity in a vast, sleeping world, move as one. You are not an individual anymore. You are a cog in a great praying machine, and the day has just begun. You file through the heavy wooden doors into the cavernous nave of the abbey church. The cold inside is a different beast from the cold outside. In the cloister, it was sharp and alive, but here, it is a dead, heavy presence that has settled deep into the thick stone walls and flagstone floor. It is a cold that feels ancient, as if the winters of centuries past are stored within the very fabric of the building. The air is still and thick with the lingering, ghostly scent of yesterday's incense, cold wax and damp stone. There is no heating. There will never be heating. The very idea would be considered a decadent luxury, an impediment to the proper mortification of the flesh. High above, the vaulted ceiling is lost in impenetrable darkness, a man-made heaven of stone and shadow. The only light comes from a few flickering oil lamps and a pair of tall candles on the distant altar, their small flames casting enormous, dancing shadows that make the familiar statues of saints seem to writhe and sway in your peripheral vision. Your place is not in the main body of the church, but in the choir, the area between the nave and the altar, which is lined with rows of ornately carved wooden stalls facing each other. You find your assigned spot, the wood of the stall smooth and cold beneath your hands. For a few moments, there is a profound silence, broken only by the last few coughs and shuffles as everyone settles. It is a weighted, expectant silence. You stand in your place, hands tucked back into your sleeves. You can see your own breath, a pale cloud ghosting in the frigid air before you, mingling with the breath of your brothers. It is a visible manifestation of your shared life, a collective exhalation in the face of the divine and the dark. This is the office of vigils or matins, the great night watch. It is the longest and, for many, the most arduous of the 8 daily prayer services that anchor your life. Then, a single voice cuts through the stillness. It is the abbot or the prior, his voice clear and unadorned as he intones the opening verse. Damen labia me aperis. O Lord, open my lips. And as one, you and your brothers respond, your combined voices creating a low, resonant drone that fills the vast space. Et os meum annunciabit laudum tuum, and my mouth shall declare thy praise. Your voice joins the others, not in soaring, complex harmony, but in a steady, functional drone. This is Gregorian chant, or plain song, and it is less about creating beautiful music and more about clothing the sacred text in a sound that elevates it from common speech. It is a tool. The melody is simple, often revolving around just a few notes, ensuring the Latin words are clear and the focus remains on the prayer itself. This isn't a performance for an audience. There is no audience but God. It's a marathon of recitation, and the goal is to get through the Psalms, the readings from Scripture, and the writings of the Church Fathers that are prescribed for this specific night of the week. The sheer volume of text is staggering. Over the course of the week, you will chant your way through all 150 Psalms. Tonight, it might be a dozen or more, interspersed with long readings. You have a psalter, a book containing the Psalms, which you might share with the brother next to you, peering at the hand-copied Latin script in the weak, flickering light. Your eyes ache from the strain. After a while, the words become an automatic recitation, the familiar phrases flowing from memory while your mind drifts. This is the great spiritual battle of the night office, the fight against sleep. Your body, pulled from its bed only an hour ago, craves only a return to oblivion. Your eyes sting with tiredness, and you fight the familiar battle against sleep, your head threatening to nod forward in a brief, traitorous bow. You shift your weight from one foot to the other on the cold stone, the chill creeping relentlessly up through the soles of your shoes. You might pinch the skin on the back of your hand, a small, sharp pain to jolt your senses back to the present moment, back to the psalm you are supposed to be chanting. The circader, the silent watchman, still patrols, his lantern gliding slowly along the aisles. His job is to spot the wavering, the sleeping, the inattentive. A quiet touch on the shoulder is a reprimand and a mercy, pulling you back from the edge of sleep. It's a common misconception that monastic life was one of constant, alert piety. It was a life of human struggle, and the monks who designed these stalls knew it. As you stand, you might discreetly fold up the hinged seat of your stall. On its underside is a small, carved wooden ledge called a misericord, which literally means mercy. By leaning back just slightly, you can rest some of your weight on this ledge, taking the strain off your legs and back without actually sitting down. It is a tiny, sanctioned act of cheating, a small concession to human frailty built directly into the architecture of devotion. The carvings on these misericords are often surprisingly whimsical or grotesque, little scenes of folklore, mythical beasts, or even satirical images of daily life, hidden away beneath the seats of these solemn stalls. As vigils draws to a close, it is immediately followed by lauds, the service of praise meant to greet the dawn. But the dawn is still a long way off. The sky outside the high church windows is still a sheet of black. Yet you chant the psalms of praise, of mourning, of light, as if to will the sun into existence through the sheer force of your collective prayer. Musicologists and historians still debate the exact nature of these early chants, how they were transmitted before precise notation existed, and how they varied from a great Benedictine abbey like this to a stricter Carthusian charter house. What is certain is the effect. The endless drone, the cold, the darkness, the aching knees. It all works to dismantle your sense of self, to wear you down until all that is left is the voice, the community, and the text. You are a living prayer, a single note in a chant that has been sung for centuries and will be sung for centuries more. Finally, the last Amen echoes and fades into the stone. The service is over. The silence returns, heavier and more welcome than before. The procession out of the church is as silent and orderly as the one that entered it. You move not back to the dormitory, for the time for sleep is past, but toward the refectory for the first meal of the day. The sky outside the cloister is perhaps a shade less black now, a deep, bruised purple that hints at the coming dawn, but it provides no warmth. Your stomach is a hollow ache, a familiar companion in these early hours. The night's long prayer has left you drained, and the thought of food, no matter how simple, is a powerful motivator. You enter the refectory, a long, high-ceilinged hall that mirrors the church in its Spartan grandeur. Long wooden tables and backless benches are arranged in neat rows. It's a room built for function, not comfort. Just like the church, it is unheated, and the air is thick with the same damp chill, now mixed with the faint, yeasty smell of bread and ale. You find your assigned place at one of the tables, the wood worn smooth by the hands and robes of generations of monks before you. There are no plates as you might know them. Instead, you have a trencher, a thick slice of stale bread that will serve as your plate, meant to soak up any juices. In some houses, you might have a simple wooden bowl and a spoon. There are no forks. Those are still seen as a strange, almost effete Italian novelty. You stand behind the bench, waiting. The great silence is still technically in effect, but it is about to be replaced by a different kind of regulated sound. No one sits, no one touches the food, until the abbot has entered, taken his place at the high table, and sounded a small bell. At the signal, you all sit in unison, the scraping of 24 benches on the stone floor the only sound. Before you is the meal. It is not much. A hunk of dark, heavy bread, likely made with rye or barley, sits beside your trencher. It is dense and substantial, but also gritty. The millstones used to grind the flour often shed small particles of sand and stone, a fact of life you've long since accepted. To modern palates, it would be almost inedible, but to you, it is sustenance. Next to the bread is a small bowl or wooden cup of what is generously called small beer or weak ale. It's thin and watery with a low alcohol content, but it's far safer to drink than the local water, which could be teeming with any number of invisible dangers. It's also a source of calories, a small bit of liquid energy to fuel the morning's work. This meal, the mixtum, isn't for everyone. According to the rule of Saint Benedict, which governs every aspect of your life, it was traditionally only for the young, the old, the infirm, or those engaged in the most strenuous physical labor. But over the centuries, many monasteries have relaxed this rule, acknowledging that a small amount of sustenance after the long night vigil improves focus and stamina for the work ahead. Historians see this slow adaptation of the rule as a sign of practicality triumphing over extreme austerity. For you, it is simply a blessing. As you prepare to eat, one of your brothers moves to a raised lectern at the front of the hall. He is the week's designated reader. His job is to read aloud from a sacred text, perhaps the Bible, the writings of a saint, or a commentary on the rule, for the entire duration of the meal. The abbot gives a small nod, and the reader's voice fills the hall. This is to ensure that while the body is fed, the mind is also nourished, and to prevent the idle chatter that might arise during a shared meal. Conversation is a worldly distraction. The focus must remain on the divine. At another signal from the abbot, you may begin to eat. The only sounds are the reader's steady, monotonous voice, the scraping of spoons in wooden bowls, the rustle of wool, and the quiet, focused chewing of hungry men. There is no conversation, no please pass the salt, no commentary on the quality of the bread. You eat with purpose and efficiency. You break off a piece of your dark bread and use it to mop up a thin vegetable pottage if it's provided, a watery stew of whatever was available from the garden, onions, leeks, perhaps some peas or beans. Meat is forbidden for most of the year, a luxury reserved for the infirm or for major feast days. The diet is deliberately bland, designed to quell the passions rather than excite them. There are no Yelp reviews for this monastery's kitchen, and that's entirely the point. You're not here to enjoy your food, you're here to be fueled by it. The taste is what you'd expect. Earthy, a little sour from the ale, the bread coarse and filling. You have likely never tasted refined sugar. Spices are an almost unimaginable luxury, more valuable than gold, reserved for the infirmary or the abbot's table on a great feast. Your palate is attuned to a very narrow range of simple flavors. This is the taste of humility. You eat quickly, knowing the time is short. The reader's voice drones on, a constant backdrop to your meal. You might catch a phrase or a sentence from the reading, but mostly it fades into the soundscape of the room. You drink your ale, the thin liquid washing down the dense bread. You use a final piece of your trencher to wipe your bowl clean, and then you eat the trencher itself. Nothing is wasted. Waste is a sin, an insult to God's provision and the labor that produced the food. The quirky tidbit here is that in some noble households of the era, the juice-soaked trenchers were not eaten by the diners but were collected and given as alms to the poor who waited at the gates. Here, within the monastery, you are the poor. You are the one who consumes the plate. It is a powerful symbol of your vow of poverty. When the abbot decides the meal is over, he rings the small bell again. All motion ceases. The reader stops, even if he is mid-sentence. You rise in unison, give thanks for the meal in a short, chanted prayer, and file out of the refectory in the same silence you entered. Your brief respite is over. The sun is likely just beginning to crest the horizon, casting the first weak, gray light over the monastery walls. Your body has been fueled, your spirit has been fortified by another round of prayer, and now, the day's true work is about to begin. The memory of the meal, meager as it was, already begins to fade. From the refectory, you do not disperse to your individual tasks. The community acts as one, and the next stage of the day is a crucial element of monastic governance and spiritual hygiene: the chapter meeting. You proceed in silent formation to the chapter house, a building often situated on the eastern side of the cloister, near the church. Its very name comes from the practice of reading a chapter from the Rule of Saint Benedict each day, a constant reminder of the vows you have taken and the ideals you are striving to uphold. You enter the square or rectangular room, which is lined with stone benches built into the walls. You take your accustomed place according to seniority, the newest novices sitting closest to the door, the seasoned veterans of the cloister positioned nearer to the abbot. The abbot himself sits on a more prominent chair or throne on the eastern wall, facing his flock. The morning light, still weak and pale, filters through the arched windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the still air. The room smells of cold stone and the faint, dry scent of old parchment. The meeting begins, as all things do, with prayer and a reading. A designated monk reads the day's chapter from the Rule. You have heard these passages hundreds of times. You know them by heart. The first degree of humility is obedience without delay. Let the monks exercise mutual obedience. Idleness is the enemy of the soul. The words are familiar, yet hearing them spoken aloud each day is like recalibrating a moral compass. They are the standard against which you must measure your own actions, thoughts, and failings from the previous day. After the reading of the Rule and a brief commentary from the abbot, the administrative business of the monastery is discussed. This is the operational center of your world. The abbot, or one of his officers like the cellarer or prior, might announce the work assignments for the day. Perhaps a section of the cloister roof needs repair, requiring a team of brothers. Perhaps the harvest of a particular crop must begin immediately. Maybe a visiting dignitary is expected, and specific preparations must be made. This is the monastery's equivalent of a morning staff meeting. There is no debate. The abbot's word is law, his authority absolute. Your role is to listen and obey. Historians view these meetings as a fascinating microcosm of medieval governance, a blend of absolute monarchy and communal responsibility. Once the day's business is settled, the meeting moves to its most daunting and personal phase, the chapter of faults. This is a moment of profound vulnerability and institutionalized self-criticism. The abbot looks out over the assembled brothers and asks if any have a fault to confess. This is not a confession of great sins. Those are reserved for private confession with the priest. This is for the small, public infractions against the rule and the harmony of the community. A brother might rise, walk to the center of the room, and prostrate himself on the cold stone floor. He remains there, a silent, humble shape, until the abbot bids him to speak. Then he confesses. "I accuse myself," he might begin, "of speaking a harsh word to my brother in the garden yesterday." Or, "I accuse myself of taking a small piece of extra bread without permission." Or perhaps, "I accuse myself of falling asleep during vigils." These are not dramatic sins, but they are breaches in the perfect discipline you all strive for. The purpose is not to humiliate, though it certainly feels humbling, but to restore the health of the community. A small resentment, an act of greed, a moment of laziness, these are seen as spiritual sicknesses that, left unchecked, can infect the entire body of the monastery. By bringing them into the light, they lose their power. Sometimes, a brother does not accuse himself. He is accused by another. The rule allows for a brother to point out the fault of another, not out of malice, but for the good of his soul. The circader, the night watchman, might report the brother he saw sleeping through the chant. A monk working in the kitchen might report another for being careless with supplies. This is perhaps the most uncomfortable part of the meeting. You sit in silence, hoping you have not been seen in a moment of weakness. It's a system of mutual surveillance that would feel oppressive in the modern world, but here it is framed as an act of brotherly love, helping your brother on the path to salvation, even if it causes him momentary shame. There's a certain grim humor in imagining a modern office implementing a chapter of faults to address who left dirty dishes in the sink. You suspect productivity would either skyrocket or plummet to zero. The abbot listens to each confession or accusation. His response is measured. The penance assigned is usually mild and symbolic. The monk who spoke harshly might be asked to pray a certain number of psalms for the brother he offended. The one who fell asleep might have to forego his portion of wine at the next meal. In more serious or repeated cases, the penance could be more severe, perhaps involving a period of fasting or being assigned the most menial of chores. The ultimate goal is correction and reconciliation, not punishment. Once the chapter of faults is concluded, a final prayer is said. The meeting is over. You file out of the chapter house, the social and spiritual order of your community reaffirmed. The sun is higher in the sky now, and the day is fully born. You have been prayed, fed, and corrected. Now Your hands, not just your voice, are required in the service of God. For some, this means a journey to the fields or the workshops. But for you, today, the abbot's assignment sends you to one of the most sacred and intellectually demanding spaces in the entire monastery, the scriptorium. The ache in your back from standing in the church will soon be replaced by the ache in your shoulders from bending over a desk. You make your way to the scriptorium, the place for writing. It is often located off the cloister, sometimes on an upper floor to ensure it receives the best possible natural light and remains dry. As you enter, the atmosphere changes. The air here doesn't smell of damp stone and incense, but of ink, parchment, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax. It is a room of intense, focused silence, but it is not the enforced, spiritual silence of the church. It is the living silence of deep concentration. This is the intellectual heart of the monastery, the place where knowledge is not just consumed, but painstakingly preserved and reproduced. The room is lined with rows of simple wooden desks, little more than slanted lecterns. Each desk is a small island of industry. You take your assigned seat. The space is austere. There is no clutter, no personal decoration. Everything present has a purpose. Before you is your work, a thick, bound volume of an ancient text, perhaps a work by a Roman author like Virgil or Cicero, or a theological treatise by St. Augustine. This is your exemplar, the master copy from which you will create a new one. Next to it is a stack of prepared vellum or parchment, the painstakingly treated skin of a calf, sheep, or goat. It is smooth, almost luminous, and incredibly expensive. A single large book might require the skins of an entire flock of sheep. The pressure not to make a mistake is immense. You unroll your toolkit. It contains your quills, cut from the flight feathers of a goose or swan, their tips sharpened to a precise point. You have a small knife, not just for sharpening the quill, but for scraping away errors from the parchment. This is the medieval equivalent of a backspace key, and it requires incredible skill to use without ruining the precious page. You have a pot of ink, a dark, rich liquid you might have made yourself. The most common recipe involves oak galls, those strange, round growths on oak trees, which are crushed and mixed with iron sulfate and a binder like gum arabic. It's a messy, alchemical process, and the quality of the ink is a point of pride. You also have a plummet or a piece of lead for ruling faint, straight lines on the page to guide your writing. Your task today, and for many days, weeks, or even months to come, is to copy the exemplar, word for word, letter for letter. You open the heavy book and find your place. Then you take a fresh sheet of vellum, smooth it down, and begin the slow, deliberate process of replication. The work is physically demanding in a way that's hard to appreciate. You are bent over your desk for hours, your shoulders and back screaming in protest. The light, even from a large window, is never quite enough, and your eyes strain to decipher the script of the original and reproduce it perfectly. There is no comfortable ergonomic chair, just a hard wooden stool or bench. After an hour, your fingers cramp around the quill. It's a common misconception that all monks were scholars who loved this work. For many, it was simply their assigned labor, a physical and mental endurance test. A witty complaint scribbled in the margin of a 9th century manuscript reveals the true feelings of one anonymous monk. Writing is excessive drudgery. It crooks your back, it dims your sight, it twists your stomach and your sides. He wasn't wrong. Your hand moves with a slow, practiced rhythm. Dip the quill in the ink pot. Wipe the excess on a rag. Form a few letters on the vellum, the pen making a faint scratching sound, the only noise in the room. Then repeat. Dip, wipe, write. It is a meditative, all-consuming process. Your mind must be fully engaged. A moment of distraction, a stray thought, could lead to a skipped line or a misspelled word. Fixing such an error is a painstaking process of scraping the ink away with your knife, burnishing the vellum smooth again, and carefully rewriting the correct text. A serious mistake could mean wasting the entire, hugely valuable sheet of vellum, a transgression that would surely be brought up in the next chapter of faults. You are not merely a copyist. You are a guardian of civilization. In the centuries following the collapse of the Roman Empire, these monastic scriptoria were the primary mechanism by which the knowledge of the ancient world, its philosophy, its science, its literature, was preserved. Without the silent, aching work of thousands of monks like you, countless classical texts would have been lost to time forever. It's a staggering thought. While much of Europe was mired in what is sometimes called the Dark Ages, a term many historians now dispute for its oversimplification, you and your brothers were the human hard drives of Western culture. The work is not always a simple black and white copy. If you are working on a particularly important book, a Bible or a psalter for a wealthy patron, your work might involve illumination. After the main text is laid down, you or a more specialized artist monk would add decorative capitals, intricate borders, and even miniature paintings. This involves using brilliant pigments made from ground minerals like lapis lazuli for blue or toxic concoctions like vermilion for red, mixed with egg tempera. You would apply delicate sheets of gold leaf, carefully burnishing them until they shone with a divine light. This turned the book from a mere container of text into a sacred object, a work of art that glorified God. Hours pass. The sun creeps across the sky, its light shifting through the windows, marking the slow passage of time. The silence of the scriptorium is broken only by the scratch of quills, a quiet cough, or the rustle of a turning page. There is a sense of shared purpose here that is different from the rest of the monastery. It is a quiet, intense collaboration spanning across your desks and across the centuries, connecting you to the original author of the text and to the future readers who will one day benefit from your labor. Your hand aches, your back is a knot of tension, but there is a deep, quiet satisfaction in the clean, black lines you are laying down, in the knowledge that you are part of a chain of preservation stretching back into the past, and with God's will, far into the future. Not every brother is destined for the scriptorium. While some are praised for their delicate penmanship, others are valued for the strength in their backs and the calluses on their hands. On many days, your assignment from the chapter meeting sends you not to the quiet intensity of the library, but out into the open air, to the fields and gardens that are the monastery's lifeblood. The Benedictine motto is ora et labora, pray and work, and the work is taken just as seriously as the prayer. Idleness, remember, is the enemy of the soul. You trade the scent of ink and parchment for the rich, earthy smell of turned soil, green plants, and livestock. The monastery is not just a spiritual center. It is a sprawling, self-sufficient agricultural enterprise. It must produce enough food to feed all the brothers, any servants or lay workers, and the stream of pilgrims and guests it is obligated to shelter. It must also, ideally, produce a surplus that can be sold to support the community, to buy the things it cannot make for itself, like iron for tools or salt for preserving food. Your simple wool habit is not suited for field work. You might be issued a rougher, more durable tunic for the purpose. You exchange your thin leather shoes for thick wooden clogs, better for navigating the mud and muck. You head out past the main cloister, beyond the workshops and the infirmary, to the open land that stretches out from the monastery walls. The work is dictated by the seasons, a rhythm as old as humanity itself. In the spring, your back aches from bending over to plant seeds, carefully placing them in the furrows you've dug with a heavy hoe. Your hands are raw from pulling the first persistent weeds that threaten the tender shoots of barley, wheat, or beans. In the late summer and early autumn, the work reaches a fever pitch during the harvest. You join a long line of brothers, swinging a sharp sickle in a rhythmic arc, cutting down stalks of grain under the hot sun. The work is relentless, from the end of the morning's first prayers until the bell calls you back for midday service. It is dusty, sweaty, and exhausting. The chaff gets in your eyes, your nose, your throat. Your muscles scream in protest. You are not a professional farmer who has done this since childhood. You might be the son of a nobleman who has never known a day of physical labor in your life before entering the monastery. The learning curve is steep and unforgiving. You learn to plow a straight furrow, to judge the weather, to tell when the grain is ripe for cutting. You work alongside brothers from all walks of life, former peasants, merchants, soldiers, all leveled by the shared dignity of manual labor. Your social status from the outside world means nothing here. All that matters is your willingness to contribute to the common good. This is a far cry from the romanticized image of a monk gently tending a few herbs. Monastic farms were often at the forefront of agricultural innovation, because the monastery was a stable institution with a long-term perspective. It didn't have to worry about sons inheriting a divided property. It could engage in large-scale projects. Monks drained swamps, cleared forests, and experimented with crop rotation and fertilization techniques. Many historians credit monastic orders, particularly the Cistercians, with revolutionizing European agriculture during the Middle Ages. They weren't just praying, they were innovating, managing vast estates with a surprising degree of economic and agricultural sophistication. Beyond the main fields, there is the vegetable garden, the hortus, which provides the daily staples for the kitchen. Here, the work is more detailed. You might be tasked with tending the onions, leeks, and cabbages that form the base of the daily pottage. You learn to build trellises for peas and beans. There is also the herb garden, a place of immense importance. This is the monastery's pharmacy. Here grow the plants used for healing in the infirmary: chamomile to soothe, lavender to calm, comfrey to help knit broken bones, and countless others. The brother in charge of the herb garden, the herbularis, possesses a deep knowledge of botany and traditional medicine passed down through generations. Then there are the animals. The monastery keeps cows for milk, which is turned into cheese. It keeps chickens for eggs. It might keep pigs, which can forage in the woods and are an efficient source of meat, though it would only be eaten on the highest feast days or served to guests. It keeps sheep not only for their skin for parchment, but for their wool, which must be sheared, cleaned, carded, and spun into thread to make your habits. Each of these tasks requires skill and hard, often smelly work. Mucking out a stable is a lesson in humility that no amount of prayer can replicate. You can't just order your clothes from an online retailer. You are intimately connected to every step of their production, from the living sheep to the scratchy garment on your back. The work is punctuated by the ringing of the monastery bells, calling you back inside for the services of terce, sext, and nun, the prayers of the 3rd, 6th, and 9th hours. You stop your work in the field, wipe the sweat and dirt from your brow, and return to the cloister to resume your other duty as a man of prayer. The transition is jarring. One moment you are ankle deep in mud, your hands gripping a shovel. The next, you are standing in a cool, dark church, your voice joining a sacred chant. This constant oscillation between the physical and the spiritual, the earthy and the divine, is the very essence of your life. It ensures you never get too lost in contemplation that you forget the needs of the body, nor too absorbed in labor that you forget the needs of the soul. Your hands may be calloused and dirty, but they are performing God's work just as surely as the hands of the scribe in the scriptorium. The sun is at its highest point in the sky, a position you've learned to judge with accuracy from the length of your own shadow on the ground. Whether you've spent the morning hunched over a desk in the scriptorium or bent over in the fields, the sound of the bell for sext, the 6th hour, is a welcome relief. It signals the end of the morning's work period and calls you to the two things your body now craves: prayer and food. You return from your assigned labor, your movements quickened by anticipation. If you were in the fields, you stop at a simple stone trough in the cloister to wash the worst of the dirt from your hands and face. The water is bracingly cold, a shock that helps to wake you from the stupor of physical exertion. You smooth down your habit, attempting to restore some semblance of order and dignity before entering the sacred space of the church. If you were in the scriptorium, you carefully clean your quill, cap your ink pot, and cover your work, leaving everything ready to be resumed later. The transition from intense manual or mental labor to communal prayer is a mental gear shift that you have practiced thousands of times. You gather once again in the choir stalls. The midday light streams through the high clerestory windows, illuminating the nave in a way the morning's darkness had hidden. The stone, once forbiddingly cold, now holds a faint, neutral warmth from the sun. The service of sext is shorter than the long vigil of matins. It consists of a few psalms, a hymn, and some short prayers, all chanted in the familiar, steady plain song. Your voice joins the collective, a thread in the tapestry of sound that fills the church. Your mind, which a few moments ago was focused on pulling weeds or forming perfect letters, is now recalled to the divine. This brief but potent service acts as a spiritual reset, sanctifying the middle of the day and reminding you that all your labor is ultimately offered to God. After the final Amen, you proceed once more to the refectory. There is a low hum of anticipation in the air, a sense of shared, weary satisfaction. This will be the main meal of the day, the prandium. While still governed by the principles of simplicity and austerity, it is more substantial than the meager breakfast you had hours ago. You take your place at the long table, the routine comfortingly familiar. The abbot enters, the bell rings, and you sit. The reader for the week is already in place at the lectern, ready to begin his recitation as soon as the meal begins. Before you is your trencher of stale bread, your wooden bowl, and your cup of ale, or on some days, watered-down wine. Wine, the blood of the grape, holds a special significance, but it is to be consumed with the utmost moderation. Saint Benedict himself famously wrote that while monks should ideally drink nothing, he could persuade them to accept about half a pint a day, a compromise that acknowledges human nature with a touch of weary resignation. The servers, who are brothers assigned to kitchen duty for the week, move silently and efficiently along the tables. They place a ladleful of thick pottage into your bowl. This is the heart of the meal. It is a stew of vegetables from the garden, cabbage, onions, beans, peas, thickened with barley or oats. It is warm, savory, and filling. Alongside the pottage, you might receive a portion of cheese or a few eggs, precious sources of protein. The most significant addition to this meal, however, is often fish. The rule of Benedict forbade the eating of four-legged animals for all but the sick, a major point of dietary distinction. This prohibition created a huge demand for fish, and monasteries became masters of aquaculture. Many had their own sophisticated fish ponds, carefully stocked and managed to provide a steady supply of carp, tench, or pike. So, while you might never taste beef or pork, a piece of poached or baked fish is a common and welcome sight at the midday meal. It's a fascinating historical detail. This religious dietary restriction had a massive impact on the medieval European economy and landscape, leading to the development of complex fishing industries and pond systems. You eat in silence, listening to the reader's voice. The taste of the food is simple but good. The fish is flaky, the pottage is hearty, and the ale is cool. You are profoundly grateful for it. You are aware of the immense labor that went into producing every component of this meal. The brothers who tended the garden, the ones who milked the cows, the ones who fished the pond, the ones who baked the bread and brewed the ale. It is a meal born entirely of your own communal effort. There is no mystery of a distant supply chain here. You know the entire story of your food from soil to bowl. This deep connection to the sources of your sustenance fosters a sense of gratitude that is hard to replicate in a world of supermarkets and takeout. So before this great story continues, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're enjoying our journey together. Your support means the world. As you eat, you might notice the subtle hierarchies of the monastery reflected in the food. The abbot, sitting at the high table, might receive a slightly larger portion, or perhaps a different type of fish. If there are important guests, they will be given the best of what the monastery has to offer, a fulfillment of the Benedictine rule of hospitality, which states that all guests should be received as if they were Christ himself. This often included meat and better wine, foods you yourself would not be permitted to eat. Historians debate whether seeing these richer foods being served to others would have been a source of resentment or simply an accepted part of the natural order. For you, it is likely the latter. Your life is about the denial of such things, not the craving of them. You finish your meal, using your bread to clean every last trace from your bowl, and then you eat the bowl itself, your trencher. The bell rings, the reader stops, and you give thanks. The meal is over, but the day is not. There is a brief period of rest now, a small concession to the body after the main meal, especially in the summer months. You might be allowed to lie down on your cot in the dormitory for a short time, or perhaps engage in some quiet, private reading in the cloister. It is a precious moment of stillness, a time to digest and recharge before the afternoon's work begins. The rhythm of the day, prayer, work, food, rest, and prayer again, is the framework that supports your entire existence. The brief, precious period of post-meal rest is over all too soon. The bell for none, the 9th hour, summons you back to the church for the afternoon prayer service. This service, like terce and sext before it, is one of the little hours, shorter and less elaborate than the major offices of the morning and evening. It serves as another spiritual anchor, another moment to pause the day's practical activities and recenter the community's focus on God before the final work period begins. The routine is deeply ingrained, the Latin phrases of the Psalms flowing from you with a familiarity that requires little conscious thought, allowing your mind to settle. After the service, you disperse once more to your labors, but your world, the monastery, is far more complex than just a scriptorium and a farm. It is a miniature, self-contained town, and its survival depends on a wide array of specialized crafts and roles. Today, you are not assigned to the fields or the library. Instead, your path takes you to the brewery. The air here is thick, warm, and sweet with the smell of boiling malt and hops. Large copper cauldrons simmer over carefully tended fires, sending clouds of steam up to the high, dark rafters. This is a place of alchemy, transforming simple grain and water into the community's essential beverage, ale. Remember that weak, watery, small beer from this morning's meal. This is where it begins its life, but the brewers also create stronger, more flavorful ales to be served on feast days to important guests or to be sold for income. Monastic brewing was a high art, and many monasteries were famous for the quality of their ales, developing unique recipes and techniques that were closely guarded secrets. You might be tasked with the heavy work of stirring the thick mash with a long wooden paddle, a job that is hot, sticky, and surprisingly strenuous. Or perhaps you are responsible for adding the hops, a flower that both preserves the ale and gives it a bitter, aromatic flavor, an innovation that monastic brewers helped to popularize. On another day, your work might take you to the bakehouse, a place of intense, dry heat and the comforting smell of baking bread. Here, massive wood-fired ovens are built into the stone walls. Your job could be kneading enormous troughs of dough, your arms and shoulders aching with the effort. You would feel the living texture of the dough, learning by touch when it is ready. Or you might be the one loading the formed loaves into the fiery maw of the oven with a long, flat peel. It is a job that requires precision and a tolerance for scorching heat. The bakery produces not just the coarse, dark bread for the monks' daily consumption, but also finer white loaves for guests, and for the consecrated host used in the Mass. Perhaps your skills lie elsewhere. You could be assigned to the tannery, an area kept at a distance from the main cloister for a very good reason. The smell is horrific. Here, animal hides from the monastery's own livestock or purchased from outside are turned into leather for shoes, belts, and book bindings. The process involves scraping the hides clean and soaking them in vats of foul-smelling liquids, like urine or solutions of lime and dog dung, to break down the hair and fat. It is nauseating, unpleasant work, but absolutely essential. Without the tanner, you would have no shoes, and the precious books in the scriptorium would have no covers. Or maybe you are sent to the infirmary. This is a separate, quieter cloister within the monastery, a world unto itself. It is here that the sick, the elderly, and the dying are cared for. The infirmary, the monk in charge, is the community's physician. His knowledge is a blend of practical experience, herbal lore from the garden, and medical texts inherited from the ancient world, often the works of Galen or Hippocrates. The air in the infirmary smells of medicinal herbs, beeswax, and sickness. Your work here would be one of gentle service, helping an elderly brother to eat, changing bandages, or simply sitting with one who is too ill to leave his bed, reading to him from the Psalms. Here, the rule of silence is relaxed, and compassion overrides all. It is in the infirmary that the austerity of monastic life is tempered with the greatest tenderness. The sick were permitted to eat meat and drink stronger wine, based on the belief that these richer foods would help them regain their strength. It is a stark reminder that even in this highly structured world, practicality and human compassion have their place. Historians often marvel at the logistical complexity of a medieval monastery. It was a fully integrated system. The sheep raised in the fields provided wool for habits, skins for parchment and leather, and meat for the sick. The grain from the harvest provided flour for the bakery and malt for the brewery. The bees kept in the garden provided honey for sweetening and wax for the thousands of candles burned in the church. Nothing was wasted. Every part of the enterprise supported every other part. Your work, whether stirring mash in the brewery or tending to a sick brother, is a vital cog in this immense, intricate machine. You are not just a monk. You are a brewer, a baker, a tanner, a nurse. You are part of a resilient, adaptable community that has mastered the art of survival, creating a stable and prosperous island in the often chaotic sea of the medieval world. As the afternoon wears on, the quality of the light begins to change. The strong, direct sun of midday softens, and the shadows cast by the abbey walls and the arches of the cloister start to lengthen, stretching like long, dark fingers across the manicured green of the garth. A different kind of quiet begins to settle over the monastery, a sense of winding down, of a great cycle slowly turning towards its close. The frantic energy of the harvest, the hot intensity of the forge, or the focused concentration of the scriptorium begins to ebb. And then the bell rings again, This is the call to Vespers, the evening prayer. It is one of the most beautiful and beloved of all the daily offices. Its name comes from the Latin word for evening, and the entire service is oriented toward the setting of the sun and the coming of night. You put down your tools, wash your hands, and make your way back to the church. Your body weary from the day's labor, but your spirit anticipating the calm solemnity of this service. You take your place in the choir stalls, the wood of your seat retaining a faint warmth from the afternoon sun that slanted through the high windows. The atmosphere inside the church is magical. The low, golden light of the setting sun streams through the stained glass windows, if your abbey is wealthy enough to have them, splashing vibrant pools of ruby red and sapphire blue across the pale stone floors and pillars. The air is filled with a luminous, colored haze. If the windows are plain glass, the light is a pure, buttery gold, rendering the entire space soft and serene. The service of Vespers is rich with symbolism centered on light and darkness. It begins, as always, with chanted psalms, but the psalms chosen for this time of day often speak of refuge, of trust in God's protection through the darkness, and of giving thanks for the light of the day that is now passing. The centerpiece of Vespers is the Magnificat, the canticle of the Virgin Mary from the Gospel of Luke, beginning with, "My soul doth magnify the Lord." This is one of the high points of the daily liturgy, and the chant for it is often more elaborate and melodic than the standard plain song. As your voice joins the soaring melody, it feels like a collective exhalation of gratitude for having been brought safely through another day. During the Magnificat, one of the brothers, the thurifer, moves to the altar. He places grains of sweet-smelling incense onto hot coals within a metal censer, a thurible, which he then swings gently on its chains. Puffs of fragrant white smoke rise into the air, catching the slanted rays of light in beautiful, swirling patterns. The smoke billows up towards the vaulted ceiling, filling the entire church with its rich, aromatic scent, a mix of frankincense and myrrh. The symbolism is powerful. The rising smoke represents the prayers of the community ascending to God. The scent clings to your robes and to the very stones of the church, a fragrant reminder of this sacred moment. As the service progresses, the world outside the church grows darker. The vibrant colors on the floor fade, and the golden light withdraws. The brother responsible for the lighting, the candle bearer, begins to move through the church, using a long taper to light the candles on the altar and the oil lamps in the choir. Each new flame is a small victory against the encroaching night, a tiny star born in the growing twilight. The flickering candlelight creates a completely different environment from the sunlit church of midday. The shadows leap and dance. The faces of the statues seem to recede into mysterious darkness, and the space feels more intimate, more enclosed, more mysterious. You are cocooned in a small bubble of light and sound, a sanctuary against the dark. This transition from light to dark, so central to Vespers, mirrors a fundamental human experience. There is no switch to flip to flood the room with artificial brightness. The coming of night is a profound and slightly menacing event. It brings an end to most forms of work and ushers in a period of vulnerability and stillness. Vespers acknowledges this, sanctifies it, and reframes it not as an ending, but as a period of sacred trust. It is a service that speaks to a deep, primal need for reassurance as the darkness falls. The service concludes with final prayers and a blessing from the abbot. The last Amen echoes in the now darkened church. The contrast between the inside and the outside is complete. Inside is the warm, flickering light of candles, the lingering scent of incense, and the fellowship of your brothers. Outside, the world is surrendering to the night. There is a deep and abiding peace in this moment. The day's work is done. The struggles, the sweat, the frustrations of your labor are behind you. The physical and mental exhaustion you feel is balanced by a sense of spiritual fulfillment. You file out of the church, not with the hurried energy of the morning, but with a slow, measured pace. You move through the cloister, which is now a gallery of deep shadows and faint, reflected candlelight. The air is cool and still. You are heading once again to the refectory for the final, simple meal of the day. The cycle continues, but its rhythm is slowing, its cadence becoming more gentle, preparing you for the great silence and rest that will soon descend. The beauty of Vespers lingers in your mind, a calming balm on your weary soul. Leaving the serene, candle-lit beauty of the church, you proceed to the refectory for the last meal of the day, the supper or cena. The hall is illuminated by a few strategically placed tallow candles or simple oil lamps, which cast a warm but meager glow, leaving the corners of the vast room in deep shadow. The atmosphere is subdued, a reflection of the fading day and your own dwindling energy. The day's main work is done, and a quiet sense of finality hangs in the air. You take your usual seat, the motions automatic, ingrained by countless repetitions. The routine of the meal mirrors the midday prandium, but everything about it is simpler, lighter, and quicker. The abbot gives the signal, and the reader for the week, his voice now sounding weary, begins another passage from a sacred text. The food served at this evening meal is deliberately sparse. The rule of Saint Benedict, always cautious of excess, teaches that supper should be a light affair, just enough to ward off hunger through the night, but not so much as to lead to sluggishness or indigestion, which might interfere with sleep or the pre-dawn prayers to come. Your bowl might receive a small ladle of the leftover pottage from the midday meal, perhaps thinned with a little water. Alongside it is your customary piece of bread and your cup of weak ale. There is no fish, no cheese, no eggs. This is sustenance at its most basic level. On many days of the year, especially during penitential seasons like Lent or Advent, there might be no evening meal at all. Instead, the community would fast from the midday meal until the following morning's small breakfast. This practice of fasting was a core part of monastic discipline, a way to train the will, purify the body, and foster a deeper reliance on God. On those days, the hunger you feel as you go to bed is a tangible prayer, a physical manifestation of your spiritual devotion. Historians note that this restricted diet, while spiritually significant, likely left many monks in a state of near constant caloric deficit, which could contribute to both physical fatigue and, some speculate, heightened spiritual experiences or visions. You eat your simple meal in the customary silence, the reader's voice a steady, lulling presence. There is no lingering. You consume your bread and pottage with quiet efficiency. The taste is familiar, unremarkable. It is fuel, not pleasure. You are grateful for it, for the warmth of the pottage in your stomach, a small comfort against the evening chill. You are acutely aware that for many people outside these walls, a meal like this, guaranteed every day, would be a tremendous blessing. Your vow of poverty is a strange thing. You live more simply than a wealthy merchant, yet you have a security of board and lodging that a landless peasant could only dream of. After the meal, which lasts only a short time, the final act of the communal day begins. You do not return to work. Instead, you gather for Compline, the last of the 8 canonical hours. You proceed either back to the main church or sometimes to the smaller, more intimate setting of the chapter house. Compline is the service that completes the day. If Vespers is a service of sunset, Compline is a service of true night. The space is lit only by a few candles. The mood is solemn, intimate, and deeply peaceful. The service is relatively short and follows an unvarying formula every single night of the year. This repetition is deeply comforting. The psalms chosen for Compline are psalms of trust and protection, asking God to watch over you as you sleep. Psalm 91 is a cornerstone of the service. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. As you chant these ancient words, your voice blending with the low murmur of your brothers, you feel the anxieties and strains of the day begin to dissolve. The words are a shield against the formless fears that can creep in with the darkness. You are placing yourself and your community into God's hands for the vulnerable hours of sleep. A key part of the Compline service is the Confiteor, a communal confession of sins. I confess to Almighty God, you all chant in unison, that I have greatly sinned in my thoughts and in my words, in what I have done and in what I have failed to do. It is a moment to mentally review your day, the impatient thought, the careless word, the moment of laziness, and ask for forgiveness before entering into the little death of sleep. It is a final spiritual cleansing, washing away the grime of the day. After the confession and final prayers, the abbot performs a beautiful ritual. He takes a small vessel of holy water and walks through the assembled monks, sprinkling them with the blessed water. A few cool drops might land on your forehead or your robes. It is a gesture of blessing and purification, a final seal on the day. Then, the prior or abbot intones the final command of the day. Benedicamus Domino, let us bless the Lord, and you all respond, Deo gratias, thanks be to God. This is the last officially spoken phrase. The service is over. The day is complete. As you file out of the church, you have entered into the great silence, the magnum silentium. This is the most profound and strictly enforced silence of the day, lasting from the end of Compline until after the first service of the new day, many hours from now. The day has been bracketed by prayer, ending as it began, in communal worship. Now, all that is left is the retreat into that sacred silence and the promise of rest. You walk from the church in a column of silent, shadowy figures. The great silence has descended, a tangible presence that stills not only the tongue but also the body. You move with care, your steps softer, your gestures more deliberate, so as not to create any unnecessary noise that might disturb the profound quiet. The cloister is dark, lit only by a sliver of moon or the cold, distant light of the stars. The air is cool and smells of night-blooming flowers from the garth and the dampness of the ancient stones. Your destination is the dormitory, the same vast, cold room you departed from in the blackness of the early morning. It looks different now, filled with the deep, soft shadows of the evening. A single lamp might be left burning near the doorway, providing just enough light to navigate the rows of simple cots, but its feeble glow barely reaches the far corners of the room. The space feels immense and hollow, waiting to be filled with the sound of quiet breathing. You find your pallet, your small, allotted space in this communal world. There is no privacy here. Your cot is just a few feet from the brother on your left and the brother on your right. You live your entire life in public, even in sleep. This is a deliberate aspect of the monastic design, intended to foster community and prevent the kind of private thoughts or actions that might lead one astray. There are no bedroom doors to close, no personal space to call your own. Your life is an open book, read by all your brothers. Modern society, with its emphasis on individualism and privacy, would find this arrangement almost unbearable. There's no room for introverts in a medieval dormitory. Or rather, an introvert's desire for solitude must be sacrificed for the communal ideal. You do not undress completely. To do so would be considered an act of vanity and immodesty. You simply remove your outer scapular and your leather belt, perhaps your rough shoes, and lie down on your straw-filled mattress, still wearing your wool tunic. The rule of Saint Benedict specified that monks should sleep clothed and with their belts on, ready to rise for prayer at a moment's notice. While the belt rule has been relaxed in many houses, the principle of readiness remains. The bed itself is a study in austerity. It is a simple wooden frame with ropes or leather straps stretched across it, supporting a mattress or palliasse stuffed with straw or dried leaves. It is not comfortable. The straw rustles loudly as you settle yourself, and it often harbors fleas, a minor torment you have long learned to endure. Over time, the straw becomes compacted and hard, offering little softness. Your pillow, if you have one, is a small, hard bolster, also filled with straw. Your only covering is a single, coarse wool blanket. It offers a little warmth, but on a cold night, it feels woefully inadequate. You lie down, pulling the scratchy blanket up to your chin. Around you, you hear the sounds of your brothers doing the same. The rustle of straw, the creak of a wooden bed frame, a muffled sigh. These are the sounds of your family, the intimate noises of the men you live with, work with, and pray with every single day. You know their individual coughs, the rhythm of their breathing. You are a single organism settling down for the night, staring up into the impenetrable darkness of the high ceiling. Your mind is a strange mix of exhaustion and stillness. Your body aches from a dozen different places. Your back from the field or the desk. Your knees from the long periods of standing in church. Your hands from their repetitive labor. Yet your mind is quiet, swept clean by the final prayers of Compline. The great silence encourages this inward stillness. There are no last-minute emails to check, no social media feeds to scroll through, No television shows to distract you. There is only the darkness, your own thoughts, and God. This is a vulnerable time. The silence can be a comfort, but it can also be a challenge. With no external distractions, you are left alone with yourself. Any lingering anxieties or spiritual doubts can surface in the quiet of the night. The monastic life is a constant battle against one's own inner demons, and that battle is often fought here, on a hard straw mattress in the communal dark. The circader, the watchman with his lantern, will patrol the dormitory throughout the night. His job is not only to wake everyone for the night vigil, but also to maintain order and ensure the sanctity of the great silence is observed. His soft, shuffling footsteps are a periodic reminder that you are never truly alone, always under the watchful eye of the community's authority. Sleep does not come easily at first. The chill from the stone floor seems to creep up through the mattress. A distant dog barks. The wind howls around the corners of the abbey. But slowly, lulled by sheer physical exhaustion and the rhythmic breathing of the men around you, your consciousness begins to drift. The aches in your body fade into a dull background thrum. The darkness behind your eyelids deepens. You let go of the day, trusting in the promise of the psalms you chanted at Compline, that you are safe under the shadow of the Almighty. You fall asleep, not into a deep, unbroken slumber of 8 hours, but into the first of 2 short, rationed periods of rest. You know, with a certainty that is built into the very fiber of your being, that in just a few hours, the sharp, insistent clang of the bell will shatter the silence and pull you back from this brief oblivion. The great, unceasing wheel of the monastic day will turn once more, and you must be ready to rise and take your place in its rhythm. Your sleep is not an escape, it is merely a pause. Your community, this island of prayer and labor, is not immune to the frailties of the human body. Sickness is a constant, lurking presence in the medieval world, and the close quarters of the monastery mean that an illness can spread quickly. One morning, at the chapter meeting, the abbot announces that Brother Thomas is unwell and has been moved to the infirmary. A wave of quiet concern passes through the room. Brother Thomas is a friend, a man you worked alongside in the garden just yesterday. His absence is a palpable void. Later in the day, your assigned labor takes you to the infirmary to deliver a basket of specific herbs from the garden. This provides you a rare, sanctioned glimpse into this separate, cloistered world within your cloister. The infirmary is built away from the main hubbub of the monastic buildings, often with its own small chapel, kitchen, and garden, to ensure the sick have peace and quiet. As you enter, the first thing you notice is the change in smell. The air is heavy with the scent of sickness, but it's overlaid with the sharper, cleaner aromas of vinegar, used for washing, and the complex, fragrant bouquet of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. The space is deliberately more comfortable than the rest of the monastery. It is one of the few places that might have a fireplace, its gentle warmth a profound luxury. The beds are softer, perhaps with feather-filled mattresses instead of straw, and the sick are afforded more blankets. These are not seen as indulgences, but as practical necessities for healing. The rule of Saint Benedict is explicit on this point. Before all things and above all things, care must be taken of the sick, so that they may be served in very truth as Christ is served. You see Brother Thomas lying in one of the beds. He looks pale and weak, his face beaded with sweat. The infirmary, the monk who is the community's doctor, is at his side. He is a man of great knowledge and gentle hands. You watch as he works. He is holding a small cup of steaming liquid to Brother Thomas's lips, a tisane made from some of the very herbs you have just delivered. Perhaps yarrow to break his fever or elderflower to soothe his cough. The infirmarer's medicine is a complex blend of science, faith, and folklore. His primary resource is the infirmary's herb garden, a living pharmacy filled with plants whose properties have been observed and recorded for generations. He knows which plants are diuretics, which are sedatives, which are purgatives, and which can be made into a poultice to draw infection from a wound. His knowledge is supplemented by medical texts, painstakingly copied in the scriptorium. These are often Latin translations of ancient Greek and Roman medical authorities like Galen and Hippocrates. These texts are based on the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, which were believed to govern the body's health. Illness was seen as an imbalance of these humors. Therefore, the infirmarer's goal is to restore that balance. A fever, like Brother Thomas's, might be seen as an excess of blood, a sanguine condition. The prescribed treatment, alongside herbal remedies, could be bloodletting. This is a shocking practice to modern sensibilities, but it was the standard of care for centuries. The infirmary might use a special knife called a lancet to open a vein in the patient's arm, or, more commonly, use leeches, which are applied to the skin to draw out a specific amount of blood. It is a therapy based on a flawed understanding of human physiology, and historians still debate how often it did more harm than good. Yet, it was performed with the sincere intention of healing. You watch as the infirmary examines a chart, not a medical chart in the modern sense, but an astrological one. Medical practice was deeply intertwined with astrology. It was believed that the planets and stars influenced the body and its humors. A wise physician would never perform a bloodletting or administer a powerful medicine without first consulting the stars to ensure the time was auspicious. It was a holistic view of health where the microcosm of the human body was directly connected to the macrocosm of the heavens. But medicine here is not just physical. It is profoundly spiritual. The ultimate healer is God, and the infirmary is merely his instrument. Prayer is as important as any herbal remedy. The sick are excused from the long services in the main church, but prayers are said for them constantly. A small chapel is attached to the infirmary, so that those who are able can still hear the Mass. The infirmary might place a holy relic on a patient's body, or read to them from the lives of saints who were known for miraculous healings. The goal is to heal the soul as well as the body. You deliver your basket of herbs to the infirmary, who thanks you with a quiet nod. You look at Brother Thomas again and you say a silent prayer for him. His fate is uncertain. A simple fever could be the beginning of a fatal illness. There are no antibiotics, no antiviral medications. Survival often depends on the strength of one's own constitution and the grace of God. Death is a much more present and accepted part of life here. When a brother dies, His passing is marked by specific rituals, the washing of the body, a constant vigil of prayer, and a funeral mass that affirm the community's belief in the resurrection and eternal life. Leaving the infirmary and returning to the more robust world of the working monastery is like passing through a veil. You are reminded of your own mortality, of the fragility of the body that you so often push to its limits. The experience reinforces the bonds of the community. You are not an individual struggling alone. You are part of a body that cares for its own, that tends to its weakest members with a compassion born of shared faith. The sight of Brother Thomas, vulnerable in his bed, is a stark reminder of why this community exists. To support one another on the difficult journey through this life and into the next. The turning of the seasons governs your life as much as the ringing of the bells. The bounty of summer and the harvest of autumn give way to the lean, hard months of winter. This is the great test of the monastery's foresight and resilience. The survival of the community through the cold, dark months depends entirely on the work done and the provisions stored during the rest of the year. Winter is a season of austerity, a time when the world shrinks to the confines of the abbey walls and the chill seeps into your very bones. The cold is a constant, oppressive presence. It is not the crisp, invigorating cold of a bright autumn morning. It is a damp, pervasive chill that the sun, low and weak in the sky, can do little to dispel. The stone walls of the church and dormitory, which offered cool relief in the summer, now seem to actively radiate cold. You feel it most keenly in the pre-dawn hours, when you are summoned from your bed to the unheated church. Your breath hangs in the air in thick, ghostly plumes. Your fingers and toes are perpetually numb, and the chilblains on your hands crack and bleed. Your simple wool habit, which felt so heavy and coarse in July, now seems pitifully thin. You wear every layer you are permitted, your tunic, your scapular, perhaps an extra cowl. But the cold finds its way through. There is no thermal underwear, no insulated boots. You are engaged in a constant, losing battle for warmth. The only places in the entire monastery that offer reliable heat are the kitchen, with its roaring fires, and the infirmary, where the sick are granted the luxury of a hearth. There might also be a warming room, the calefactory, where a communal fire is kept burning. Here, brothers are allowed to come in shifts to thaw their frozen limbs for a few precious minutes, a brief, blissful respite before returning to their cold duties. The work of the monastery changes with the season. The fields lie fallow under a blanket of frost or snow, so the large-scale agricultural labor ceases. The focus of work moves indoors. This is the traditional time for crafts and repairs. You might be assigned to the workshop, mending broken tools, their iron handles frigid to the touch. You could be in the cobbler's shop, repairing worn-out shoes, your fingers stiff and clumsy as you try to stitch the thick, cold leather. It is a time for weaving wool into cloth for carpentry, for all the indoor tasks that were postponed during the busy planting and harvesting seasons. For you, as a scribe, winter can be a particularly challenging time. The scriptorium, with its large windows designed for light, is also frightfully cold. The ink in your inkwell can threaten to freeze. You must work with your fingers tucked into your sleeves between strokes of the quill, blowing on them to try and keep them nimble enough to form the delicate letters. The daylight hours are short, dramatically reducing the time available for writing. Work must often stop by mid-afternoon as the light fails, for the risk of fire from using too many candles near the precious manuscripts is too great. A scribe in a medieval Irish manuscript famously wrote a short poem in the margin, contrasting his cozy cat purr with his own miserable condition. I and purr, my cat. T's certain / we have tasks both strange and fun. / hunting mice is his diversion. / hunting words is my one. It's a moment of relatable complaint that bridges the centuries. The diet also becomes more monotonous. The fresh vegetables of summer are a distant memory. You now subsist on what can be stored: dried beans and peas, hard cheeses, and root vegetables like turnips and parsnips kept in the cellar. You eat pickled cabbage and other preserved foods. The bread and ale remain constants, the caloric core of your diet. Food is not just for sustenance, it is for warmth, and the simple, starchy meals, while bland, provide the energy your body needs to fight the cold. Yet winter is not without its own solemn beauty and spiritual significance. The stark, skeletal forms of the trees in the cloister garth, etched against a gray sky, have a minimalist beauty. The silence seems deeper, amplified by a fresh fall of snow that muffles all sound. The world is simplified, stripped down to its essentials, which aligns perfectly with the monastic ideal of simplicity. Spiritually, this is a time of inwardness. The liturgical calendar moves through Advent, a season of watchful waiting and penance, culminating in the great feast of Christmas. Then follows the long, ordinary time leading to Lent. The darkness and cold of the physical world are seen as a mirror for the spiritual state of humanity, waiting for the light of Christ. The struggle against the physical cold becomes a metaphor for the spiritual struggle against sin and despair. Enduring the winter with patience and fortitude is an act of faith. Life slows down. With fewer daylight hours for work, there is often more time for reading and contemplation. You might spend the dim afternoons in the cloister, wrapped in your blanket, poring over a theological text, your mind finding warmth in the fire of ideas when your body can find none. The community is thrown back upon itself, its bonds strengthened by the shared hardship. You are all in this together, a small, huddled flock surviving the winter against the odds. It is a time that tests your endurance, but also deepens your reliance on your brothers and your faith. The first signs of spring, the budding of a tree, the return of a migratory bird, will be met with a joy and relief that someone who has never endured such a long, hard winter can scarcely imagine. Your life is a steady, predictable rhythm of prayer and work, governed by the bell and the season. The days, weeks, and months blend into one another, a seamless cycle of repetition. But this austere routine is occasionally punctuated by moments of communal joy and celebration, the feast days of the liturgical calendar. These are the holidays of your world, eagerly anticipated bright spots in the gray fabric of ordinary time. A major feast day, like Christmas, Easter, or the feast of your monastery's patron saint, disrupts the normal schedule in the most wonderful ways. The change is felt even before the day begins. In the preceding days, there is a subtle hum of preparation. The brother in charge of the church, the sacristan, works with his team to clean and adorn the sanctuary. The finest altar cloths, often intricately embroidered, are brought out from storage. The abbey's collection of relics, if it possesses any, are displayed in their ornate reliquaries. The church is filled with the maximum number of candles, their combined light creating a dazzling spectacle that banishes every shadow. On the morning of the feast, the bell for matins seems to ring with a more joyful tone. The services themselves are longer and more elaborate. The chants are more complex and melodic, perhaps even including polyphony, the interweaving of multiple vocal lines, a musical luxury reserved for the most important occasions. The readings are more festive, and the abbot might deliver a special sermon, his voice filled with a warmth and enthusiasm that departs from his usual measured tone. The entire community dresses in its best, cleanest habits. The sheer sensory richness of the experience, the blaze of 100 candles, the sound of soaring music, the heavy scent of the highest quality incense, is a stark contrast to the simplicity of a normal day. It is designed to overwhelm the senses and lift the soul, giving you a foretaste of heavenly glory. The most anticipated change, however, is the suspension of all non-essential labor. There is no work in the fields, no copying in the scriptorium, no toil in the workshops. Ora et labora becomes, for a day, simply ora. The day is given over entirely to prayer, reflection, and communal celebration. This respite from physical and mental toil is a profound gift, a chance for your body and mind to truly rest and recover. You have more time for private reading, for quiet walks in the cloister, or even for conversation. On some feast days, the strict rule of silence might be relaxed during certain periods, allowing for quiet, edifying conversation among the brothers. The sound of controlled, happy chatter in the cloister is a rare and welcome music. And then there is the food. The meal in the refectory on a feast day is something you might dream about for weeks beforehand. The cooks in the kitchen pull out all the stops, using the precious ingredients saved for just such an occasion. The bread might be made with finer wheat flour, making it lighter and softer than the usual gritty rye loaf. You will certainly be served the strongest, best quality ale from the brewery, or perhaps a generous portion of wine. The main course is the greatest departure from the norm. The prohibition against the meat of four-legged animals is lifted. You might be served roasted pork, its skin crackling and savory, or a rich beef stew. Given that you may not have tasted meat for months, the flavor is intense, almost shocking to the palate. Spices, those incredibly rare and valuable commodities, are used with a liberal hand. The kitchen might use a pinch of pepper, a dusting of cinnamon, or even a few precious threads of saffron to flavor the dishes. To a modern person, it might taste like a simple, hearty meal. To you, it is a banquet of almost unimaginable luxury. You eat slowly, savoring every single bite. Even the atmosphere in the refectory is different. The reader at the lectern might read a more entertaining text, perhaps the story of a saint's life filled with dramatic miracles, rather than a dense theological treatise. There is a palpable sense of shared delight and gratitude. These feast days are more than just a day off. They are a vital part of the psychological and social health of the community. They act as release valves, breaking the tension of the strict daily routine and preventing the burnout that could come from relentless austerity. They reinforce the community's identity and shared beliefs by focusing everyone's attention on a central mystery of the faith or the life of a beloved saint. They are also a reminder of the goodness of creation. The fine food, the beautiful music, the rest from labor, these are seen as reflections of God's generosity, a tangible sign of the abundance of His grace. However, even in celebration, the principle of moderation is never entirely forgotten. It is a feast, not a wild party. Drunkenness or gluttony would still be a serious fault to be confessed. The joy is a structured, sanctified joy, channeled through the liturgy and communal norms. Historians sometimes view these feasts as a clever form of social control, a way to make an incredibly difficult life more bearable and thus more sustainable. But for you, living inside the walls, it feels less like control and more like grace. It is a temporary return to paradise, a day when the kingdom of heaven feels just a little bit closer. As the day ends with a final, beautiful Vespers service, you feel restored, refreshed, and ready to pick up the familiar rhythm of your life on the morrow, your spirit nourished by the brief but powerful break in the routine. The feast day passes, a bright memory that slowly fades as you fall back into the familiar, comforting cadence of your daily life. The fine altar cloths are put away, the ordinary chants resume, and the simple pottage returns to your bowl in the refectory. Day follows day, season follows season, and year follows year, each one a bead on the long rosary of your life. You grow older within these walls. Your hands, once soft, are now permanently calloused, a testament to years of labor. The Latin of the Psalter flows from your lips without thought, as natural as breathing. The faces of your brothers become as familiar to you as your own reflection. You stand in the choir during the pre-dawn vigil of matins, your breath misting in the cold, just as you have done thousands of times before. You are no longer the young, uncertain novice who struggled to stay awake. You are a senior monk, a pillar of this community. You watch the new novices who stand near the back, their heads nodding with sleep, and you feel a sense of empathy, remembering your own struggles. You have become part of the institution, a living stone in the foundation of this house of God. Your work continues. In the scriptorium, you are no longer just a copyist. Perhaps you are now the armarius, the librarian in charge of the entire collection of precious books, deciding which texts need to be copied, repaired, or acquired. You are a guardian of a treasure of knowledge that has been accumulated over centuries. You hold in your hands a manuscript copied by a brother 100 years before you were born, and you oversee the work of a young monk who is creating a book that will be read long after you are gone. You are a link in an unbroken chain. Or perhaps your life's work has been in the fields. You no longer perform the heaviest labor, but you are the one who teaches the younger monks how to read the sky for weather, when to plant the seeds, and how to best rotate the crops. Your wisdom, earned through decades of observation and experience, is as valuable as any text in the library. You have helped to sustain this community, to feed your brothers, to ensure its survival through lean winters and summer droughts. Your legacy is written not on vellum but on the land itself. You reflect on the life you have chosen or that has chosen you. It is a life of profound sacrifice. You have given up personal property, romantic love, and individual autonomy. You have submitted your will to the will of the abbot and the rhythm of the rule. From the outside, it might seem like a life of deprivation, a cramped and colorless existence. But from the inside, you perceive it differently. In giving up the distractions of the world, you have gained a powerful sense of purpose. In sacrificing your individual will, you have become part of something much larger and more enduring than yourself. Your life has been dedicated to a single great project, the creation of a perfect society in miniature, a community wholly dedicated to the service of God. This monastery is a machine for prayer, and you are one of its essential components. Your daily chants, your silent labor, your adherence to the routine, they all contribute to a vast spiritual reservoir. You believe that this constant offering of prayer benefits not just your own soul, but the soul of the entire world. You and your brothers are spiritual soldiers, fighting a battle against the forces of darkness with the weapons of psalms and silence. Historians will one day look back at your era and argue about the role of monasteries. Some will see them as bastions of knowledge that preserved Western civilization. Others will view them as vast, wealthy landowners with immense economic and political power. Still others will critique them as institutions that withdrew the best and brightest from the world. All of these perspectives hold a piece of the truth, but they cannot capture the lived reality of your existence, the simple, day-to-day texture of a life spent in pursuit of a divine ideal. You are an old man now. One day soon, you will be the one lying in the infirmary, cared for by a younger generation of brothers. You will hear the distant sound of the bells that have structured your entire life, and you will know that the great work continues without you. You feel a sense of peace. You have built something that will last. The knowledge you copied, the land you tilled, the prayers you chanted, they will all outlive you. Your small, quiet life, lived within these stone walls, has been a contribution to a legacy that will echo for centuries. The wheel of the day turns, the great cycle continues, and you are at one with its rhythm, content in the knowledge that you have played your part. The sun sets on another ordinary day. You gather for Vespers, your aging voice joining the timeless chant. The candlelight flickers, the incense rises, and you feel a profound sense of gratitude for this simple, structured, and meaningful life. The world outside the monastery walls was often a place of chaos, of famine, war, and uncertainty. But here, within this sanctuary of stone and silence, you and your brothers built a different kind of world. You created a society ordered not by the sword but by the bell, a life measured not in wealth but in devotion. Your days were a quiet, repetitive tapestry of prayer and labor, a cycle that could seem monotonous but was in fact a profound act of faith, a living testament to the belief that a structured life, dedicated to a higher purpose, was a life well lived. The knowledge you so painstakingly copied in the cold scriptorium became the seed of universities and the Renaissance. The agricultural techniques you perfected helped to feed a continent. The rhythm of your day, the ora et labora, infused Western culture with a sense of the dignity of work and the importance of contemplation. We owe more than we know to the quiet endurance of your days. So as you drift now into the comfort of your own bed, in your own quiet room, appreciate the silence that is a choice, not a rule. Appreciate the warmth that comes not from a distant, guarded fire, but from the simple turn of a dial. The legacy of that distant, disciplined peace is a foundation for the freedoms you enjoy tonight. Let the echoes of the chant fade. Let the scent of incense dissolve into the stillness of your room, and allow the profound, unbroken quiet of the great silence to guide you into a deep and restful sleep.